Hey, yo, what's happening now, my peoples? This is your boy Big E. Today we here live and direct from the crib and with another quarantine edition of the Workers' Voice Radio. We got my man Joey holding it down. We got Greg, main streets, coming straight from the main streets of revolutionary Vietnam.
I
we also
wish.
got Nath in the building holding it down. And we got my man Travis London holding it down. All right. And we're going to have Travis, our special guest today. And we're going to get at him a little later, with some details and how he's fighting this struggle in the Baton Rouge area. But, we want to, again, welcome everybody to Workers' Voice Radio, a weekly radio show produced by the New Orleans Workers Group, which is dedicated to serving the interests of the working class people of New Orleans. We recognize and respect the people that's living check to check, that's waiting all day for the bus. My people that's forced to look for somebody to watch their child as they go to their overworked and underpaid jobs. We're here to uplift the people getting low wages, such as the sanitation workers, the school cafeteria workers, the day laborers, the bus drivers, the store clerks, the educators, community leaders, etc. The working class pulls in over $8 billion annually for the city of New Orleans. But who profits from that? Is it the masses of poor people that make this place so special? Or is it the super rich that swindle billions wherever they go? We actively fight against mass incarceration, slave labor in jails, and forced deportation. We fight for the workers the city depends upon, people getting poverty wages, people with few benefits or rights, people that's being forced out their neighborhoods, forced to pay higher taxes, rents, and fines, all while the wealthy get tax exemptions and less regulations. Workers' Voice serves to expose the real conditions of workers' lives, to highlight and encourage struggles to fight back. Each week we will cover stories and be a voice for the working class in the ongoing fight against white supremacist, capitalist rule in and around the city of New Orleans. We know that every issue from fighting racism to resisting imperialist wars are working class issues. So we present the news from the interests of workers, not bosses, bankers, and world profiteers. We also want to give a big ups to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3 FM for hosting us on that stellar radio station. It's a reminder to listeners to check out the website, WHIVFM.org, and click on the support link at the top of the page to become a member to help keep these voices on the radio show afloat and independent. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated and are tax deductible. And speaking of deductible, we're going to throw it to Greg to be able to deduce some of the information about COVID, the crisis that's happening right now in the country, in the globe for that matter.
Yeah, we wanted to start off just recapping some of the big picture relating to the COVID-19 pandemic right now. So at this point, we're looking at over 154,000 deaths worldwide. The U.S. is currently leading in deaths, by a long shot, a long ways. The U.S. currently has 34,386 deaths, and by comparison, China only had 4,632. Iran only had 5,031. When a couple months ago we were hearing about how it was ravaging Iran, because it was definitely doing that, but the U.S. is way up there ahead of anybody else. And of course, Louisiana is continuing to be a hot spot. There's been 1,267 deaths already in the state. And and it's one of those situations where the further in you go, the more kind of horrific it looks. So put on your magnifying glass. Now we know in Louisiana, 70% of people who died from the disease are Black, and predominantly working class. St. John Parish in Louisiana has a higher death rate. That's one of the parishes in Cancer Alley, which has been subject to a lot of pollution over the years, environmental racism. The death rate in St. John Parish is higher than in New York. And so at the same time, we are starting to see some of the good effects of social distancing where it has actually been implemented. But you don't want to, just because you're starting to see some positive results, that doesn't mean you stop. That's like taking, if you're taking an antibiotic and you stop taking it after 2 days because you start feeling better. Well, it hasn't, the antibiotic hasn't finished running its course. You could still be sick, and you're setting yourself up to fail. But the push from the rich, the push from the ruling classes to open the economy wide up and try to get those profits rolling in for the ruling class, and that's being pushed by Trump's so-called Council to Reopen America, which is another family affair. Looks like it includes his daughter Ivanka and Jared Kushner, who made his money as a slumlord in New York. So it's like a usual cast of characters, ghouls and monsters who are pushing this kind of thing. And we've seen this wave of protests to reopen the country. Particularly, a lot of attention has been paid to Michigan, where there were protesters in Lansing, which is the state capital. But we want to emphasize this isn't coming from the workers. This is coming from the bosses. And, for example, the Michigan Conservative Coalition, which is also known as the Michigan Trump Republicans, was one of the groups that organized this. The Michigan Freedom Fund, which is linked to Trump cabinet member Betsy DeVos, who's worth $1 billion. Her brother, Eric Prince, was the CEO of Blackwater, a multi-billion-dollar private security / mercenary organization. And they've attracted all the usual fascist shock troops like the Proud Boys and these other Klan type organizations who are out there. There are people with Nazi flags and Confederate flags. So this is the usual cast of characters that's pushing this. It's absolutely not welling up from the desires of working class people in this country. So.
Yeah, you're right, Greg. Appreciate that. And what I'm saying, like, just to be able to break that to like sort of the macro case, on a more micro, like local level, as far as people's everyday experiencing. We want to get Travis in this to be able to tell us, how this current crisis is affecting him and his family, as they are already living, in like a cancer alley situation in the Baton Rouge corridor with all of those chemical plants and whatnot, surrounding them and eating up that land. I'm gonna throw it to Travis for that.
Yeah, like right now, St. James, right now in St. John Parish, you have a lot of people with lung problems, and that's natural because of the Cancer Alley location. They're the heaviest emission area in Cancer Alley. So a lot of the people also there that's in St. James and St. John Parish is elderly. It started off as a retirement community. Now it's packed with industry. So these places rarely have like real medical facilities to handle these situations. Like the Dinka plant. The Dinka plant all got chloroquine. The people that get affected by chloroquine, the only way they get adequate amount of medical services is they go to another state in Kentucky. Another place in Kentucky that treat chloroquine. Cause that's the only other place in the United States that produce chloroquine. But they're the only state that have the adequate amount of resources to treat people with chloroquine. But that's another story. But the pollution there is affecting everybody's lungs. And and with this virus, affecting everybody, that's the first place it attack is your lungs. So a lot of the people getting sick, a lot of people die in St. John Parish, got the highest death rate right now in the whole nation. The sad thing also in my community in Donaldsonville, you have a lot of people that kind of like downplayed the virus, which a lot of people are walking right now with the virus. So misinformation is another thing that affecting the communities in Cancer Alley.
And and Travis was talking about, like, the fact that it was set up as a retirement home. It's on top of a retirement place. This on top of the fact that these are people that are like, many of them are descendants of the enslaved Africans that were, within that plantation area of Louisiana that built up this wealth, as we talk about this inequality, like this stuff is rooted in a historical context. As you talk about the planter class within that area, that owned these plantations, they were some of the first millionaires. They were the first millionaires in this country. And, the backbone of this country built off of slavery. And, as people talk about, oh, you know, that happened hundreds of years ago, you know, that don't matter. It's like, man, again, when you know the history, you realize it's rooted in that. Now, as we talk about these health issues and how prevalent it is in this community, this isn't by accident. You know what I'm saying? This is by design. You know, this is what the capitalist structure creates. It creates an underclass where, you know, there's a wealthy, a few at the top that benefit, and the masses at the bottom, you know what I'm saying, suffer. And it still goes on hundreds of years from now, even though slavery so-called ended in 1865. But yeah, Travis, like expand upon that, like within the Black community especially, you know what I'm saying, how this is, you know, disproportionately affecting them and why that is, or, you know, some causes of that.
Okay, for instance, right here in Donaldsonville, we in Ascension Parish. Donaldsonville is 75% Black, 25% other, you know. You got the other side of the river, they have the reverse effect. It's mostly 75% white, 22% other. So a lot of the resources and a lot of the news media had covered on the other side of the river. We on the Black side of the Ascension Parish, we didn't have like a lot of resources brought to us, even though we the poorest area in the Ascension Parish, and not to mention that we are the parish seat. So being that we are the parish seat, we're not treated as the parish seat. You know, Donaldsonville even was once the capital of Louisiana one time. But
explain to that what that means, parish seat.
Oh, the parish seat is something like like in the state, you got like the you know, the state capital, you know, is at the center place for business and so forth, and in politics and so forth. Just like if you were living in a county, you have a county seat. Well, you know, in Louisiana we have parishes and stuff, so that's the parish seat that we all sit in.
Gotcha. I got you.
You know, something that stands out for me is that what, as Big E was saying, I mean, so much wealth, you know, has been extracted, you know, from this particular part of the country, this, you know, just along the Mississippi River. And, you know, right now, the plants that Travis was describing, the Danka plant is owned by DuPont. The Dow has a major petrochemical enterprises along these. These are some of the largest transnational corporations on the planet. In fact, they are the largest producer of chemicals on the planet. You know, so the contrast couldn't be any greater. You know, the people who sit on the boards of Dow or DuPont are the same who have enjoyed in this most recent bailout, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars that have been lavished on them and their various subsidiary companies. While right now, you know, either you're going into work at what Travis was describing, CF Industries. This is the major producer of ammonia, right?
Yes.
And exposing yourself by way of just, you know, as a work hazard, or you're scrambling to make rent, you're scrambling to put food on the table, and waiting for your $1,200 check, which many people have not seen. And as we were talking about just earlier on the just a few moments ago, maybe you're waiting for your SNAP to come through. You're waiting for your unemployment to come through. Right now, I was saying earlier that I got a text from the Department of Health and Human Services that basically said, "Don't bother us. We're swamped. If you bother us, you may not get. You know, we may delay your request." And so. And so to contrast, you know, I mean, these are enormous disparities that are experienced. And to say one thing in addition is that we really need to raise is that there should be absolutely no rationing of healthcare on the basis of the conditions that these people experience, because they're, you know, exposed to pollutants that are emitted from a Dow plant or a DuPont plant, and therefore treated as having pre-existing conditions. There should be absolutely no rationing of healthcare on the basis of the experience of these people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Travis.
Now the crazy part that, you know, speaking about health, it's crazy. Like, you know, in a town that I stay in, Donaldsonville, that a lot of people don't take a certain Medicaid coverage, and it's odd to me because like, if you have Medicaid and you contract in Louisiana, and they have these different types of Medicaid people, you know, companies, they all should be accepted. You know, when they have these contracts with certain hospitals and so forth, a lot of people don't have access to the local hospital we have, and they had to go to another hospital off distance. Some people don't have transportation to get there. They got to call transportation, and then how transportation condensed a lot of things in Louisiana. Don't have a lot of transportation companies like they had back in the day. And back in the day, they had about like 233 different transportation companies, but now they greatly decreased, you know. And another thing is that touching on the food stamp situation, you got a lot of people put people through a rigorous application progress, which some people quit because, you know, either they don't have help or they don't understand what's going on in the application. Sometimes they be eligible and still get denied and don't know their rights to the appeal, you know, and it just automatically quit. Just like in Donaldsonville, we had the welfare office in our town. It got moved to the richer part of town, which the richer part on the parish. I understand, I'm like, you have the most poor people on this side of the river, and the welfare office should have stayed in this side of the river. Everybody else on the other side of the river have all the resources they need, so they don't really, you know, be on welfare. Because the largest recipients of welfare is on our side of the river. And when we try to go and do unemployment applications or unemployment food stamp, you know, when we complete that project, you still have this program where you gotta go and get into filing your unemployment and going through a training. And with that training, you have to be on a one-on-one training inside a building. We don't have a Louisiana workforce on this side of the river. We got to go find a ride on the other side of the river if we don't have transportation just to sit a class like 30 minutes an hour. And like a lot of people don't have access to go across the river, so that disqualified them for having eligibility to the Medicaid. Medicaid and the food stamps and unemployment.
And plus, I mean, the food stamps application process for anyone who's been able to do it recently is, like you were mentioning, Travis, it's completely jumping through hoops. I believe it just doesn't take into account the actual realities that working people face. So recently, when I applied, they had a rule that they could call you at any time. You couldn't specify what time of the day, like they had to call you. And so they called me while I was at work. And immediately my application was thrown in the garbage, because if you don't make that phone call, well, then clearly you're not invested in the food stamps process, and therefore you deserve to starve, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, this issue of you know, access to healthcare for people throughout the rural U.S. South has only gotten worse and worse over the last few years. Gregory, I think you did a little report on the amount of hospital closures throughout the U.S. rural South, which numbers in, you know, more than 100 in the last 10 years. And you know, this is what is the reason? It's not because people don't need healthcare in these areas. It's certainly you know, and people have mobility issues, you know, as Travis was referring to. But the reason that these places are closing is because they turn out not to be profitable enterprises. A lot of these are for-profit enterprises, and because they don't yield the profits to their shareholders, they're taken away. So we have a system, you know, that in which people are in dire need of healthcare, but it's not being met because it's not yielding a profit to the capitalists who control the production.
A lot of small towns now don't even have basic clinics, doctors.
Travis? Hold up.
Oh, you give me?
Yeah.
I'm glad you touch on that. The Baton Rouge area, for instance. One time they had Earl K. Long a while back.
Yeah.
That got closed down. So I had noticed, like, throughout last year and stuff, they started moving a lot of services from the impoverished area to one other end of Baton Rouge. they had started Corporate Boulevard, put the welfare office on that side of the river. I mean, on the side of the of Baton Rouge, and they put a lot of other the government services on Corporate Boulevard. I'm like, they got a government street. Why it couldn't be on Government Street? Why everything got moved to Corporate Boulevard? So we start seeing the building of all these hospitals and stuff, the new women's hospitals and so forth. Everything was in one section. All of a sudden, you see on the ballot a St. George community. So now that community of St. George, which got most of all the established people in Baton Rouge, all in that one community is sharing so many multiple hospitals. And you go to North Baton Rouge, they got the Exxon plants and got other kind of different exposures to chemicals and so forth up there. And North Louisiana, I mean, not Louisiana, North Baton Rouge don't even have a hospital. Not one. But you got St. George community and all, they got multiple facilities and stuff to treat people.
Yeah, look, Travis, that's all kind of little slick ways, the ruling class, what I'm saying, does to be able to break people up and make their conditions, even their material conditions, even more oppressive. Something else they did in the Baton Rouge area a couple of years back, they got the Mall of Louisiana, and they expanded, using tax dollars. They gave all kind of hookups to Best Buy and these big companies with tax incentives, to set up this shopping corridor. And then they split the way in which they divide the tax revenue. Like the reason why they even got like a North and South Baton Rouge is like steeped in racism. I'm saying? It's a way to, you literally, just like within New Orleans, and damn near all these major metropolitan cities, these big cities, you got where there's a large underclass of Black folks and people of color and women and trans and gay people, living oppressed, poor whites. And then there's a class of, rich folks, that, hoard all the wealth and are able to control the tax revenue, whether it's how the businesses are taxed, how the residents are taxed, how it is that they then share the tax revenue. These are all like little slick maneuvers, that old saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. In some instances it is like, and they're real slick with their legality. But realize that they do these things not to serve the interests of the masses of people, or poor people, but to serve the business and to serve rich folks, man. And that's the way this thing is set up. Something else I wanted to mention was the fact of the matter that we were talking about, like within that Baton Rouge area. You also got on the other side of Lafayette, like, going towards Lake Charles before you get to Texas, you got a place called Mossville, where they have a company, South Soul. South Soul is a South African chemicals and energy company, in which they basically, they eating up land every which way they go, and they're making these poisonous chemicals that pollute the air and give people in the area, these hazardous conditions that they live under. In that Mossville area, it was a predominantly Black area, and they just went in there and ate up all that land, like bought up all the land around the neighborhood, and eventually just started buying the houses from people, like as they started suffering and dying. The same thing is happening similar instance happened in Garden Plaza here in New Orleans. You got environmental racism all over this country, all over the world for that matter, with these big industries that want to make all this money, usually through the petroleum industry, through the energy industry, through the chemical plants, and they do it at the behest, irregardless of what it does to the environment or to people, just how much money they can make at the end of the day. And that mentality has to go for humanity and the earth to survive.
And just to give you a sense of the character of the U.S. government, on the same day that Trump declared the state of emergency, that is, after the World Health Organization had already declared a global pandemic, he announced in the same address that he was planning a bailout of the oil industry, which has recently taken a hit, or mainly shale oil and gas production, and he took the occasion to make the announcement that he was filling the strategic oil reserves up to the very brim. In other words, these are all these salt mines, mainly in Louisiana, that he's going to be, filling up and using taxpayer money to the tune of, several $billions as a subsidy to the oil company. I mean, we have done, so there's some figures out there that basically indicate that we talk about tax revenue. Certainly, some of these corporations, have some obligation, tax obligations, but many of them, because they receive subsidies from both the state and the federal government, basically don't pay taxes. And in some instances, the subsidies exceed the amount of obligations that they actually have to put money into the coffers of the state. And so, in the cases of Exxon Mobil and other, oil companies in Louisiana, they have almost a totally parasitic relationship with the state. Where they're drawing out all of this value and they're contributing very little except pollution. Travis?
Yeah. Getting back to that, when you were talking about, Louisiana was Trump was trying to set up Louisiana to be the largest liquefied natural gas storage place in the world. Right now, Texas is overloaded with so much liquefied natural gas. They were drilling way more than the demand, so the supply was way more than the demand. Which happened with that is that when that happens, your prices get lower. And the sad thing about it is that not only that cripple the oil and gas situation that you got that shouldn't be crippled in the first place, but you also put yourself in the middle of a trade war, incidentally, with other countries. So now you have to figure a way how to make oil and gas profitable again, and not try to, try to go and make sure that you understand this with a trade around the world. So right now, the bad idea what it was doing, what Trump did was he drilled too much. The sad thing about when he was drilling too much, that he went and used the eminent domain law that went there and took a lot of people's property, and mainly blacks. Sometimes a real estate person could take property just doing maintenance and could go and use the adverse possession on stuff. You could go and say, well, we're going to charge you a high bill for keeping up the maintenance on your lane. They'll go there and take your lane. That's something that we are fighting currently in Donaldsonville, being a controlled small group. That's what I'm trying to do right now, trying to help people take their land against adverse possession, and these high maintenance bills that people, real estate will use to try to go and take people's houses. Even with the property tax, you have some people that don't know and realize they own land, and you don't have the city or the state that try to properly contact the heirs. And sometimes they take these lands without proper notices, which is illegal. Because you at least gotta send one notice to the heirs before you could do any legal action against anybody that own land. But you have one of these companies that came out of California, went into the New Orleans area and started buying up all these real estates and started selling them out to different developers outside the state. That's why it brought in the gentrification in New Orleans. Now for Mossville situation, they had a deal with the state that they wanted to do a relocation. The deal was that they were supposed to get, I think, $300,000 to $500,000 with the FEMA, and the same amount with the plant that moved in Mossville. Well, that what they were gonna set up was. That was a good relocation money, despite that they didn't want to leave, but at the same time, the plant had found out about the FEMA money. So they went and told the state, well, if they're getting this FEMA money, why should we pay all this money in settlement claim and stuff? So the state cut the planning deal to where the planning had to pay so much to the relocation. So the taxpayers paid way more to the relocation of Mossville than the plant workers. I mean, to the plant that put the pollution in the community in the first place. So if you didn't take that money that they offer you, then the state was like this: either you take the money or we do eminent domain. So they scared some people into taking the money.
And I mean, right now we're so much in the stranglehold of these giant companies. So when you have these major events, for example, because Russia and Saudi Arabia have decided that they're not going to cut production, that basically the price of oil has gone down. Not only that, but there's 30% reduction in general oil use worldwide because of the pandemic. So prices have gone down, and therefore the prices of production for frack gas have gone down as well. And we see, I want to make this point that there's a relationship, because we're so very much in the stranglehold of these giant transnational corporations. It's not just in Cancer Alley and St. John, St. James Parish, and elsewhere. You'll see that the actual foreign policy of the U.S. government has influenced. After all, the former Secretary of State was the CEO of ExxonMobil once. And you see that they're freaking out at the prospect that they can't, profit as they were before. And so they're going after market share for what's called conventional oil. And where can you get conventional oil? Iran, Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest, conventional oil reserves on the planet, and Iran has the third. And right now, amid a global pandemic, they're making moves to try to force a coup or else to topple the government so that they can take control of these resources. It's pretty wild.
Yep. Matter of fact, speaking by Iran, you got a group that keep in contact with some citizens around there. The crazy thing about it, like, since Trump came to office, they used to have these drone attacks. Mm-hmm. And like they kept provoking Iran, with different drone attacks. And Iran would just try to tell them, like, hey, y'all killing some citizens. As a matter of fact, recently they had a farmer had lost his wife, his young daughter, and a baby, and he was so distraught that he had went move on one of his open fields in the farmland, and they were like, well, United States gonna have to take me by the state. They had created a very like horrible mental health in there in some of the parts of the of Iran. But they were trying to, Trump wanted to try to start a war, and he was trying to get the oil and gas to go and invest it to the tanks and stuff like that. So then you start seeing the stocks of oil started to go up. And the crazy thing about right now is that they're still trying to keep the influence on Venezuela. So Cuba had the midst of the virus, Cuba, they had a hospital with it in Cuba. They actually were treating, they came up with a treatment that actually was effective against the coronavirus. So they were going in Italy, they was going in a little bit of parts of Africa, which the news media didn't cover. And it was another country they ended, I can't remember. But United States was trying to stop Venezuela people and going into Cuba. So what they try, the crazy thing is that, like you say, they trying to, go into them different types of continental oil and try to use that to advantage. In the midst of a crisis, they don't focus on the crisis at hand. They're worried about corporations.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you even saw recently that the United States, like the fact that Cuba has been able to produce this vaccine, even under the U.S. stranglehold, like that information in and of itself is a threat to the U.S. hegemony. And so you see that recently I was reading an article that the U.S. has been, like Washington has been blocking ventilator sales to Cuba. So again, it's like all about this profit motive and anything in order to hide from working class people that there is, that there are other ways of producing goods and meeting the needs of our community.
Yeah, and again, man, like everything that everybody's describing, we're giving these specific, examples of what's happening. But like again, this is just to look at everything, to step back. This is put yourself in the mindset of knowing that we have all the resources we need on this earth. So as we face with this pandemic, this epidemic, that's taking place, it's not just affecting people here in New Orleans or Louisiana, it's on a global level. So how it is that we help people on a global level, and we do that by having what we would deem as like a planned economy, where you would know anticipate something of this nature happening, and not just with this, as this is a viral disease, but also with earthquakes and with hurricanes, and natural disasters that take place, as well as economic, downturns, because that's the next thing of this, going from this healthcare crisis to economic crisis. They follow one another as people are going to be out of work and this capitalist system falls, goes under because people are unable to hold it up. It's the masses of people holding it up. Like imagine, it's you gotta, what the game is, people play Jenga, and the Jenga thing is you got the masses of worker, all of the blocks, you take these blocks out, they ain't got nothing, and so that person at the top, they crumbling, they falling, so they're trying to figure out ways to keep themselves at the top. And what we need to recognize is if we have a planned economy, we will have enough ventilators, we would have enough masks, and we would have, where even prior to this, people would be in a better health condition in the hospitals, and nurses and doctors and all the healthcare professionals available would be more equipped, versus this sort of, like helter skelter, just throwing shit at the wall type of mentality that, the crisis that capitalism creates, and the structure that we're currently under.
I think it's really worth noting that public health experts and scientists have been warning about the possibility of this type of global pandemic for a long time. And it's so policymakers can't say they didn't know that something like this was coming. And other countries have put in, built infrastructures after the Ebola outbreak and the SARS outbreak. And so if we had a real planned economy where working class people and scientists and medical professionals were in control of things, we would prioritize dealing with these kinds of situations because we know they're going to happen.
Yeah, also, I don't know if y'all have heard about this or not, but so every year, apparently Johns Hopkins University and some other official like health organization, but Johns Hopkins, I know, they do a test of a natural disaster and how it would currently impact the Earth worldwide. And so in 2019, the disaster that they did was literally COVID. It was like a COVID type virus in the same family. And they found that there would be 61 million deaths throughout the world if, nothing was done, and nothing was done. So it's not just that like, they literally knew, they knew exactly what it was. And I think like the more we can talk about that and the more we can realize that these people are just playing with our lives, the more we can actually start to organize and fight back and get that planned economy.
Yeah. I mean, this is the case with a number of senators and Congress people who actually were, making investment decisions based on knowledge of the forthcoming, disaster. And yeah, I mean, we have the capacity to plan for these things. I think we find ourselves in a moment that is full of promise on one hand and peril on the others. I mean, I think we see, that the way that the ruling class, the capitalist ruling class, is going to respond, we have to be on guard against all of their diversions. They're trying to scapegoat, for example, right now, because they have failed so miserably, because the rate of death per million people is more than 25 times that in China. They've decided that China is responsible. They're going to blame China. Not only that, but that they're increasingly making moves. But I want to add, this is not just issuing from the racist in chief, but as a bipartisan effort to make moves against China, to threaten it, and to get working class people here in the United States on board with an actual war, which would be, of course, as we all know, would be disastrous. Amidst a global pandemic, you have, as we noted, Just 2 weeks ago, the Congress requests $20 billion to develop the artillery and the manpower of the Indo-Pacific Command. And that's directed explicitly at China. And of course, we've seen these horrible violence against Asians here in the United States, which is an outgrowth of this really horrible, right-wing movement to divide up the working class against ourselves. And so we have to be really on guard when crisis hits. This is what they go to: war and racism.
Go ahead, Trav.
Yeah, the crazy thing that I found the United States did, they've been knew about the outbreak, they've been knew about this outbreak amongst the panelings, I think that the Chinese and Africans eat. This paneling that they say they had the virus, at this wet market. They've been knew about this since August of 2019. So what happened was October came. You seen a lot of CEOs leaving their position, like they were preparing for the leave their position, so they don't have to deal with trying to get workers money and try to help the economy, trying to help these people through these times, during the suppressing times of the economy and this virus. Like you could say, like they got to the gambling table, cashing their ship, and you went there cashing the big old chips and left off the table.
Right.
And left everybody with one chip at the table or whatever. That was scary. And they did this purposely because Trump, in December 2019, Trump had 3 lawsuits against him. He had to come up with each lawsuit. He had one had to come up with high school training. The other one had to come up with his taxes information. The other one had to come up with his bank account. And I think he intentionally let this virus happen because you don't hear anything more about those allegations. I don't know, maybe right now getting discussed.
Well, they're certainly freaking out that the profits, which are drawn from the exploitation of workers, are not rolling in. There's no doubt about that. And this is exactly why they're rushing people to get back to work, and this is why they're asking that in lieu of profit that they get from the process of exploitation, that they get it directly from the federal government. So of course the ruling class is composed of lots of different sectors. Those in charge of the Exxon Mobil, those are in charge of the war profiteering companies, etc. But the sector that I want to draw people's attention to, because they're extremely dangerous right now, is exactly those two: the oil and gas, and then the war profiteering companies. For example, Boeing got something like $70 billion. It got half of the amount of money that was allocated to hospitals in this country. So these people, or at least the people on their boards, certainly not the workers, have a terribly inordinate influence on the way that we're able to respond to disasters, respond to infectious diseases, etc. But we have seen where some of the workers at these big transnational corporations, for example, the workers at GE, actually made a protest, somewhat recently, respecting social distancing. They were 6 feet apart from one another, and they were saying, we have the ability, we know that we have the industrial capacity to actually build ventilators instead of building jet engines for military aircraft. And that really needs to be lifted up. I mean, that's really an important action by workers, saying that we have the capacity, we don't want it squandered on warfare. This is what we should be saying, across the country, of course, is to make ventilators, not bombs.
Right. Look, and so, just, I'm saying, put a press and some urgency into people. We got to be able to not let this shit continue on as usual, business as usual. Because we are, as the working class, black and brown people, poorest people the most expendable. And so as they put us through this rut of a capitalist cycle, and we got to pay this bill, we got to pay that one, this one, that one, it's like our livelihood and our health tends to be at the back burner of our thought, as we press down, what I'm saying? You're getting hammered every which way, it's a case of where you tend to just go through it and keep going, but you're suffering, and, your livelihood is deteriorating, each and every day, and it shouldn't be like that for us, man, at all. So, we can't let business continue as usual at all. That's the most pressing thing. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, like definitely. Like going back to one of y'all had I can't remember who mentioned it. One of y'all had mentioned Blackwater, the Blackwater ops, right? They had a company that stemmed from there with the Delta people that were called Tiger Swine. They was the security company that went there and oppressed and brutalized the Native Americans that was in the Native Indians that was in North Dakota with that, huh?
Yeah, Standing Rock, yeah.
Yeah, Standing Rock. So they were trying to come in Louisiana, which I had done a lot of research. They had some other people that did paralegal work, and they had protests. We all put all that combined together, and we had stopped Tiger Swine from coming into Louisiana. Now what happened, what they did, they were trying to get a female on to try to take advantage of the minority program that's in New Orleans for to help minority business to get started. She was trying to go to the examiners board and try to rest up the business again, but through a different name. But they were gonna keep the same people, but just switch the name up. They found out about it before I even had a chance to research it. So they told her no. I had found out recently that a lot of those people at defunct, they went there and defunct away from this Tiger Swine. They start entering a lot of these subcontract businesses that's located in Louisiana that do a lot of surveillance. And recently they had people exposed in a lot of protests against surveillance across Louisiana. We don't know if these people really still operating, but that's one thing, that in the plans of getting, observed, and, getting data together to present to the security examiner board how dangerous the private armies are, And another thing too, you had mentioned about was the other thing you mentioned about shoot. I can't remember. I lost my train of thought. But I remember. Racing in Louisiana, they had a liquefied nitrogen gas plant. They were trying to go in and for the pipeline. The pipeline was going there first. Then they were thinking about putting a compressor station right there in the historical black area of Raceland, which one of the first black settlements in Louisiana. It's on the Allendale community. The Allendale community in the back of it got an unmarked, it's marked, but it's not registered with the nation for some odd reason, not registered with the United States, but it's a mass grave and it's on private property, And what happened is they didn't try to go and get the slave grave site registered, and they were trying to put a pipeline to it. So we went to the commission and got the pipeline kind of moved up, even though we trying to stop it altogether. But at least we had a plan B just in case they had to go through. At least it's not touching the area that is, affecting a lot of the black history, in the area, or even taking in by community. So they were trying to put a compressor station in Raceland. I had put in how the Baycon sinkhole, how the Baycon sinkhole had damaged that Baycon community. So I had presented them with that. And I told them how liquefied nitrogen gas is explosive and could do more damage than the Sunoco sinkhole did in Pennsylvania. So when I give them that information, they took the compressor station out of Raceland, but they moved it to a remote area in between Ascension Parish and Assumption. Hopefully we could stop the whole project altogether since the coronavirus is all out right now. And also the Mississippi River is high. A lot of constructions on different things is slowing down now. Or not slowing down, but they're not even doing in the construction work right now because of the waterways is kind of high, like the Mississippi River and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Thank y'all for that, man. Thank you for that, Travis. You know, we getting down to, you know what I'm saying, the last few minutes here. We wanted to go ahead and let Nat hit us with a few updates, you know what I'm saying, that's happening around the city and with the groups.
Yeah, so hey y'all, I'm a member of the New Orleans Hospitality Workers Alliance. We've been hosting weekly Zoom meetings for any hospitality worker in New Orleans Parish especially, but honestly anywhere throughout the state. So if any of our listeners are hospitality workers, you can message our Facebook page, New Orleans Hospitality Workers, to find out more information about how you can kind of get plugged into the work that we're doing. And also, we've been just trying to do some mutual aid stuff around like helping people with the unemployment applications and the food stamp applications, and making sure that as workers, we're all in solidarity with each other as this stuff is going on. Also, just generally, yeah, follow our page, and I hope if anybody is a hospitality worker, workers bulletin, a workers bulletin gets released and sent to all our contacts, and it's just kind of updates of things going on around the state, around the country, and mostly bringing it in from that worker's perspective, not what you're getting in the Advocate or all these newspapers that are owned by the same one rich guy. We're trying to actually tell folks how these different policies or different stimulus checks or whatever are going to be tangibly affecting them and their families. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Thank you for that, Nat. Travis, you want to go ahead and hit the people with how they can keep up to date with you and, you know what I'm saying, keep in touch with you?
Right now, you can follow me on Facebook right now, and also too, I'm thinking about planning on running for mayor in Donaldsonville. So that's in the plans, and we also getting some other people to run for different things. And right now, Donaldsonville was rated the second worst community in the nation. So what we try to do is we try to establish something where we could control the money in the area, the real estate, and the education. So we putting on different coalition with different people in the citizens in Donaldsonville, and we coming together with different plans that are gonna be announced on our page real soon. We already developed another page. And where you can follow me on Facebook for right now is on Travis Lamont London, or you could just type in Travis London and you'll find me on Facebook, and just or you could just put in Travis London Donaldsonville, and I will have the Garden Plaza resident token thing on my page, the token icon on my page.
Yeah, thank you for that, brother. And with that piece, you're talking about the historical knowledge of the Black residents in that area. I'm gonna have to link you up with the good brother Malcolm Suba and take them down NOLA movement, because they got a lot of connections with that. And we use that as a sort of catalyst, you know what I'm saying, to get into class struggle, the representation of these white racist symbols to represent their white racist system, you know what I'm saying, capitalist system. And so, that's a very important piece, man. And I'm gonna definitely link you up with brother Malcolm, brother Mac.
Oh, thank you.
Also, you know what I'm saying, like us as New Orleans Workers Group, you know that you can follow us on social media. If you are on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, just type in New Orleans Workers Group, as well as on YouTube. You type in New Orleans Workers Group on SoundCloud. You can type in NOLA Workers and be able to get the as well on Spotify under WHIV Radio. They got us on Spotify and a few other podcasts. If you just type in either WHIV Radio or NOLA Workers or Workers Voice, you could also just go through our social media pages and be able to link up and get all past previous episodes as whatnot. So, reminder to everybody out there, but first I want to thank, the comrades for coming on the show and all our guests for listening. Much love and solidarity. And this is a reminder to working class people in New Orleans to make this place so desirable. We're the soul and essence of the city. We're the food, the dance, the music, the rhythm, the talk, the flavor. We're all that and some jazz, you dig? Till next time, much love and solidarity, my peoples. All power.
All power.
All power.